Hello and welcome to a City Voices interview with Rachel Flanigan. And I'm going to let Rachel introduce herself. Rachel, tell us about your life, your work, and your life's work.
Gosh, that's a huge question. Um, so I I think that you invited me here because I'm a Hearing Voices facilitator, and I am one of the founders of the Mountain Hearing Voices group, and we're a group that meets every week to explore our voices and visions and extreme states and build community with each other and have mutual aid and support in our experiences outside of a structured clinical setting. And I started this group because I was looking for support for my own experiences, and I went to some other people's groups, and it was really beneficial for me. And I was able to get together with a few other people and start our own group in the online space. And we started in 2018. So that was before the pandemic and before there were a lot of support groups happening online. And so we started, because we were one of the first online, we started having people join in from around the country, people who were in rural areas or had transportation or family issues to being able to go to a group in person. And I've had a lot of great opportunities out of that group. I started facilitating a second group for the Mental Health Association of San Francisco, and have made really great connections and friendships in my life, and got to deepen my exploration and my understanding of my experiences. And I went on this multi-year journey with the voices and strange phenomena that I was experiencing, of questioning them and talking to them and learning about their stories and their role in my life. And I'm really inspired to be in relationship with these forces in my life. And I was greatly inspired by Joseph Campbell, and fitting my life and these experiences into a mythological framework, and bringing these elements of myth and magic and adventure into my life. And I'd say it's really my life's work to share that process with other people. I don't try to put that on people who aren't interested in it, but it's been really fulfilling to me to participate in that, and making my own mythological journey out of my life, and to help people do that as well. And this
Okay.
is, yeah.
Yes. Tell us about this mythical journey. Are you the hero of A Thousand Faces?
Absolutely. And so are you. Yeah, so this is this if people haven't heard about Joseph Campbell, and it's not just him. I've heard from other people, he got some of these ideas from Jung and other people, but Joseph Campbell's who really inspired me. So the idea is really about looking for where I feel there's meaning in things that happened to me in my life, and then really leaning into it and being big with it. So yeah, I like to see things in terms of big adventures, and taking on these archetypical roles of being a protector and being a healer, and feeling into all these different sides of yourself, and also seeing my life in terms of the narrative structure of a myth, where I go up to this cosmic gate, and it can be very strange and scary, and then I get thrown in and I'm tested, and you have to go through the test. After you're tested, you go through something really difficult, but you go through it, and when you go through it, then you receive teaching.
When you
And
say that the test is really difficult,
Mhm.
um, does that mean you have to overcome a certain emotional challenges?
um, Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the difficult journeys that I go through relate to traumatic experiences, and situations in my past that I haven't resolved, and so I find myself on this very focused inward journey, like dealing with forces that relate to those situations, like living in a home with bug infestations, and having to deal with physical bug infestations, and having lice for 8 months
Wow,
was a really
when was this?
traumatic thing for me. This was many years ago, but then that comes out in the mythical journey, when I go through the gate and I'm tested with walking through clouds of bugs,
So
which
bugs,
are in my perception, but not physically there.
uh,
So that's
bugs are one of those things that really
yeah,
creeps you out, right?
yeah.
Okay. And so when you go on this mythical journey, the
Mhm.
you something confronts you with the bugs to challenge you.
Mhm.
Um, and it's something that have you gotten past the bug phobias?
Um, I don't know about gotten past it. I'm not sure. In a lot of sense, I'm different from a lot of other people who do peer work, because I don't really believe in recovered or not recovered, or some linear path. So I would say I haven't gotten over it, but I have gotten a different understanding of it, and a way to go through it.
What bugs creep you out the most?
Ants.
Really?
Yep.
They're so industrious. They're such colonizers. I mean, they're militant, yes, but there's so many varieties. And is it any ant from the tiniest one to the largest? Any ant?
Yeah.
Okay. What is it about ants that creep you out the most? I mean,
Hmm.
you're more creeped out by ants than you are by praying manti or cockroaches even, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is it about ants?
It's that I have this personal connection to ants, and really memories about them. The creepy crawly feeling of them crawling on you and biting you, and the ants also excrete smells as messages. and I'm very sensitive to those.
You can actually smell it. You can actually pick it up in your nose, the ant secretions.
Yeah, some of them.
What does it smell like?
Well,
I mean, do you feel
it,
comfortable talking about this?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's fine. Um, they these small ants, they have a specific smell you might notice when you crush them. When they die, the scent they secrete when they die, it's a little peppery and a little mustardy.
Oh, okay. So it's not all together unpleasant. Have you ever crushed
It
a?
is to me, but I associate it with death. So,
Oh, okay. Is part of the hero's journey overcoming a fear of death?
hmm. I would say it's different for each person. Fear of death is a really good motivator to do something in life.
Are there worse things than death?
I don't know. That's really difficult to say. It depends on the individual.
What about a life of
Um,
emotional abuse, physical abuse? It's
mhm.
life, but it's filled with abuse. Is that worse than death?
Hmm. For me or for anyone?
Well,
I,
speak for yourself then.
yeah. Hmm. I don't. Hmm. I guess I would say for me, uh, I've learned to leave situations that seem abusive to me.
So you haven't,
So
yeah.
I wouldn't live that life anymore.
So you could opt out if you needed to.
Hmm.
You know, some people, it's much harder for some people in
Yeah, it
those
is.
circumstances.
It really is.
Um, now, you don't have to answer all my questions. This is
Hmm.
this. It's more like a stream of thought.
Yeah.
Um, let's pretend, let's pretend. I mean, this is not, God forbid this ever happens to you, but you're stuck in an abusive situation. God forbid, you're stuck in it.
Hmm.
There's no way out. Well, the one way out is death for
Hmm.
for when someone's being tortured.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know. Did you see Dune, the David Lynch Dune?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, the Duke was captured by the enemy, and he had
Hmm.
a tooth that he could like chomp down on, and it would release the poison that would
Hmm.
kill him and the rest of the people in the room.
Hmm.
So when he was being tortured, and it's ironic because one of the torture in the movie, one of the tortures was that he was covered with ants, like head to toe.
Oh, great.
So maybe you don't want to see that scene.
No.
But he opted out by chomping on the tooth and releasing the poison.
Hmm.
So, I mean, but imagine if that's like, psychological, emotional abuse,
Hmm.
torture, and there's no way out because, like the Duke, he was strapped to a gurney, and
Hmm.
let's say, you know, hypothetically, you're emotionally strapped and you don't see a way out except this one way, which is your tooth.
Yeah.
But that's like, when people find absolutely no hope, no reason for
Hmm.
going on in a torturous existence, that's how many people opt out.
Hmm.
Um, and it and so the question is, what is my question? I don't know.
I your question was about if life could be worse than death.
Ah, yeah, good question.
Um, and so, I mean, for me, yeah, I've definitely been there, but I'm still here. So yeah, I've been in places where I felt like where I felt like my options were really narrow and I didn't see other options, but I'm still here, and I do believe if people have some supportive friends or even one supportive friend that they
Is
can be
that,
with, there can be some help to see other options.
was it a friend who helped you out of that situation? Or did you find
It
something internal?
both. So I've been in that situation many times in my life, and uh, one time it was one of the voices that I hear that helped me out of that situation, and that actually really helped change the relationship between me feeling tortured by this voice and feeling very afraid of the fact of hearing it, that when I was in that desperate a place, that it gave me something to do that changed my life. And it was a very simple thing. It just told me that so I was in graduate school, getting my PhD, which is a long, torturous road in itself. And yeah, it told me that I had to give this theoretical mathematical model away um, to my friend Frank, who's now my PhD advisor. Um, and uh, so I emailed Frank and told him, you know, I have this model that fixes this problem with your work that you presented in the seminar, and you can have it. And Frank immediately wanted to talk to me and wanted to work with me, and we started working together. And we're still working together on our collaboration. So
Did you complete your own PhD?
I'm still working on it. I just completed my 6th year of the program.
Oh, wow. How did,
I'm hoping to graduate in December, but I might graduate next spring, and I'm not going to put pressure on myself to do that in a particular time frame. I'm going to keep putting my health first. So.
do you have all the written work done?
No, I'm writing my dissertation now.
Okay.
I'm still doing data analysis.
Ah, yes. Is that a strength of yours, statistics?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I do research design and statistical consulting work. Um, and I feel really lucky that I've been able to like bring these different sides of my life together, because now I am working on non-medication, um, mental health, alternative sort of services, and doing empirical verification on some studies on some of those services, and working with people on medication minimization studies as well.
Minimization as well as no more meds?
Well, the language, I don't use meds personally.
Mhm. Have you ever?
I Yeah, I did, and I'm close to 3 years off now, a little more than 2.5 years off.
Very impressive.
Yeah, but in the studies we usually say minimization, because so in the studies we have people who are trying to withdraw. In some of them we have people who are being withdrawn in a clinical trial, and in some others that I'm working on we have people who did try to withdraw, and then we have survey data or web forum data from them.
Well,
And
let's talk more about you. So it's
yeah.
been 3 years since you've been on medication. Is at this point, after 3 years, is it like a clean slate? Like it's as if you've never been on them before? Or is there something permanent about having been on medication that just doesn't get out of the system?
No, it changed my life. For me, I mean, like I said, it's been almost 3 years, so I can't say if it will be permanent. But I think it will. It's not permanent for everyone, but I do have some lasting effects. I started having seizures, convulsive seizures, within 2 weeks of starting a new medication. And so even though I've completely gotten off the medication, I still have convulsive seizures sometimes.
Oh,
And I have I have what are called focal point seizures. So I have like little, I have certain nerve lines that will fall into a pattern of twitching rhythmically,
hmm.
and I can't stop it. When I was first starting to withdraw, that was happening all day, every day, and it was really exhausting. But now it's calmed down so much to the point where when it comes back, I will notice it, and it's like a warning sign of being in a stressful situation. But I
Oh,
know that this is that it's, so maybe over time as I continue like regenerating neurons, this will become less and less, but it is a lasting change that I
were those antipsychotic medications that you were on?
yeah.
Okay. Hmm. 3 years off of them. That's amazing.
Yeah.
May it be 3,000 more years. Many more lives.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so, okay, you talked about what happens in your body.
Mhm.
What's happening in your mind that has been something that you had to adapt to having weaned off meds?
In my mind, I would say it's all beneficial being off. The negative of withdrawing was the was the physical effects, but in my mind, I feel like I feel like myself again. I'm someone who's always drawn, and I draw a lot, and when I was on the meds, I really felt like I couldn't draw and I couldn't express myself anymore. And it's fun to look at my sketchbooks like over the period of time that I was withdrawing, because you can flip through the sketchbook and literally see like my ability to draw with definition and detail and accuracy like coming back to life.
Is it because that you're more connected with a certain part of yourself that is
Mhm.
free to express creatively now?
Yeah. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like taking the medication really like reduced any of the symptoms that I was given the medication for. It just made me feel more like trapped inside my body and unable to express myself.
Did you see The
Um,
Exorcist?
yeah, it's been a long time.
Well, there's this scene where Reagan is possessed by Pazuzu, and she's sleeping because they gave her like a high dose of something, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like resting in bed. but she's all, you know, deformed and twisted from being possessed. And they lift up her shirt to look at her breastbone, and in like bubbled skin, there were letters that formed that said "Help me," as because that was Reagan trapped in her own body, that was possessed and that was controlled by another entity. But it's a little different when you're on meds, right? It's not like you're possessed by a demonic entity. It's something else. Can you describe that?
Mm. Yeah, for me, I feel like I went on a long journey on a boat. I was, I was always, I was always nauseous and tired, and um, kind of felt like my head was spinning. Um, it really made me feel like it was such an effort to do every little thing that I tried to do. So, you know, maybe I was emotionally flatter, or maybe I was emotionally more, you could say, stable. Like it was very hard to cry. It was hard to fight. Like it was hard to engage in a conflict in relationships because I felt like I didn't have the energy. Like it was such an expense of energy to do anything.
So now 3 years off of them, tell me, do you have more energy? Are you more in touch with your emotions?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes to both?
Yeah.
And being in touch with your emotions and having more energy, it's therefore much easier to create. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's easier to do everything.
To do everything.
Yeah, it's easier to work, it's easier to keep the house clean.
What about relationships?
Everything but sleep. It's easier to do everything but sleep.
Why? What happens at night?
Um, well, I I sleep. Uh, I'm I enjoy my sleep more because I have much more access to my dreams, and it's just different. I don't feel like then it really felt like I would take it right before bed because I knew I had like this certain window before like the nausea and the dizziness hit me really hard. Um, but it was like taking something and then just being knocked out
Hmm.
and incapacitated for so long. And then I would try to get up and it would be really difficult to get up. And
Now,
now I have more of a just a, you know, I sleep pretty lightly and just sleep for as long as I need to. It feels much more natural.
um, do you find it harder to close your eyes and fall asleep?
Um, yeah, I do. But I live a pretty active life. So I try to wear myself out.
So you'll be in bed with your eyes open, and what goes on in the mind that keeps you from sleeping?
Um, hmm. That's not really a problem that I have very much. Um, yeah, I'm really busy. I have a lot of demands from work and family. So
So your mind is on
usually
all the
it's just
things.
like all the things I need to do.
Okay, so your mind, you're in bed at night, and your mind is thinking about all these things you need to do, family, professional obligations, all this stuff, and it's well, it's is it creating anxiety? And because you can't sleep when you're anxious, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that's happening. That like there's this guru. His name is Muji. He calls that a mind attack at night when it
Mm,
keeps you up and you're like almost
mhm.
stressing about everything. Do you think a mind attack is an accurate description of something like that?
Um, Possibly. I don't, it's not really, it's not something I experience a lot. I usually get, like, I usually go until I'm exhausted.
Oh, okay. And then
So,
you work so hard that you just like fall into bed and sleep.
yeah.
How many hours do you get?
It depends on the day. 6 or 7.
That's pretty good. That's pretty
I'd,
good.
I'd like, yeah. I've really been, I've really been trying to have fewer days where I go without sleeping because I have so much work to do, but it's definitely hard in graduate school. And there's a big culture of expectation of not sleeping, and people will would always ask how many hours I had slept because I'm the person in the program with the reputation for sleeping too much. Um,
Oh, what?
but that's easier, but actually since the pandemic and we haven't all been together in our lab so much, that's been easier because I haven't been so much working with my cohort, and
I mean, besides blood, food, and the natural bodily processes, sleep is like
mhm.
universal. You don't have to have a mental health issue. I mean, everyone goes to
Yeah,
sleep. That's why we're talking about it, because it's important. It applies to everybody, and it's
yeah.
crucial for
Hmm.
all kinds of stability and quality of life. Do you find that you
Yeah.
wake up exhausted? How do you wake up refreshed? Are you a zombie in the morning? What's the situation?
Ooh, that's a good question. It depends on the day. Sometimes I wake up refreshed and I'm really happy to get up and go. A lot of time, a lot of the time I'm woken up by fear. Like I wake up with some sort of big fear, often about um,
Fear of what?
deadlines or
Example, fear of what?
um, deadlines or things that I'm not getting done in my life, or conflicting obligations. But
I'd like to talk about relationships.
okay.
Like have has relate the concept of relationships, being relationships, having friends, maybe an
Mhm,
intimate partner,
mhm.
um, family relationships, all relationships. Um, can you tell us about relationships during meds and relationships post meds?
Sure. That's kind of difficult. My relationships have changed a lot since then. Um, and I wasn't on meds for a very long time. It was about a year and a half total for me, um, because, well, they were awful and I had these horrible side effects. So, I could keep switching and trying more, or I could stop. And I got off the train and stopped. But during that time, I was at the very end of an 18-year relationship, um, with a man that I married, and I still co-parent with. And uh, yeah, there was a lot that really didn't work about that relationship, and it's difficult to end up in this power dynamic where one person is supposedly the sane person and one person is supposedly the crazy person. So there's one person who has an authority on what's real and one person who doesn't. And that didn't work for me.
Was he aware that you were a voice hearer, that you are a voice hearer? Was he accepting of that?
He is aware of that, and he is very afraid of it. He has a very his concept of it was that he had a belief that he had beliefs around that which were not at all grounded in my experience. He had a lot of fear that things would drastically change, and that the voice hearing in itself was dangerous.
Where did he
thought
get
that
that?
the content of my experience would change, and that they would start telling me to do violent things, and that I would not be able to resist that, and that I would then do violent things, even though I don't have any history of this. And I think that when people do hear things like this, even though that's not really my experience, I think it often is really helpful to look into the feelings and experiences behind that, and look for maybe a more maybe a less direct, instead of interpreting it very literally, looking for a larger meaning, that they're signaling some real threat or something that really needs to change in your life, instead of being so literal about the content.
About the content.
Yeah.
What do you mean about the content?
Well, I mean, so if I have a voice that tells me to give up poisonous food, someone can very crudely interpret that and say that, oh, I have a delusion that my food has been poisoned, and who did it? But I would like to look more deeply into it and look at, like, if I'm eating a diet that is hurting me in some way, or maybe looking at if there are chemicals or pesticides in my food that don't agree with me. When I started seeing a neurologist for the seizures that I experienced on meds, one of the first things he started telling me to do was to experiment with changing my diet in different ways, because there are foods like certain bacterias in aged cheeses can actually be seizure triggers for people. So there's this very surfacey, stereotypical way to look at symptoms, or look at the experience of, like, the voice talking about poison in the food, which is something I experience. But I want to look at it, like, not so literally, but dig down into, like, the problems with factory farming and the food system, and how are the hormones in the food affecting me, and how are the pesticides in the food affecting me, and like maybe what really is poisonous food, as opposed to someone has poisoned my food.
The voices, there are some voices who are like in an advisory capacity, and like the voice that lectured you on the food, and
Mhm.
advised you on the food, like the voice that advised you to share your to give away your dissertation to a colleague, and
Mhm.
then you experience the fruits of these these decisions, these actions that originated with your voices. Um, do you find that are there more helpful voices than there are, disruptive ones? Are there both? Is there a culture? What's going on here?
I would say for me, so everyone's different. And I actually, I do have a big list I share sometimes of what I think are the common um, experiences or common types of voices that people hear. But for me, the ones I experience, it's completely mixed. So I would say that the content of what they say is helpful to me, but their timing is often very disruptive and not and maybe not compatible with my life or a professional life. But
Can you give us
then
an
I have to
example?
learn to balance my life.
Can you give us an example of like how really bad their timing was at some point?
um well they love to okay, I do have this story I like to tell. I had an interview with the director of research at the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. And one of my voices, who's like my protector, was just talking about how dead and evil his eyes looked throughout my interview with this guy. Except I managed to pull a good question out of it. And because so at different Federal Reserve banks, there's a split between the time you spend doing your like self-directed research and your time working on policy. And I asked him what the split was between how much time I would like how much control I would have over my research agenda. So I was asking a question about time and freedom to do my research. And his answer to the question was telling me about um, all the powerful people and how much access I would have to put my research in front of certain people. So I asked him a question about freedom, and he gave me an answer about power, which actually did give me a lot of information about him and if I would want to work there.
Did you take that job?
No, I didn't continue with the process.
Did that his response turn you off?
Yeah, very much so. And I listened to that. I listened to that disruptive. I listened to that protective voice that disrupted the interview because I trust it now, and I did think that was a good warning, and that it would not have put me in a position with enough flexibility to do my own research and take care of my health.
Hmm. There is a fine line between voices and thoughts, because you could have easily just thought that this guy was creepy as hell, but you actually heard it from a voice.
Yeah.
And you could have thought to give away your dissertation, but instead you heard it from a voice. And you could have thought that you need, pure food, but you heard it from a voice.
Mhm.
So, I mean, of course you still experience thoughts, right? You
Yeah.
experience both voices and thoughts.
Hmm.
So,
Yes, and we all have, like me, Rachel, and each of the voices all have somewhat different motivations and agendas. So our thoughts tend to be a bit different from each other's.
So the voices have their own thoughts,
Yes.
like an entity.
In my experience.
Uh-huh. Do you have any access to their thoughts?
Only when they tell me them.
Okay.
I really believe that it's not a universal experience for everyone who's hearing voices. So so I have my relationship and understanding of what it is that I'm experiencing, but I don't believe that that's the same experience for everyone.
Oh
It's
no,
going
of
to come
course
out in
not.
very different ways for different people in the
Of
room.
course, of course. This is your experience. This is
Yeah.
Rachel Flanigan's experience. I don't know. Where should we go next? We have 12 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll just ask you, what messages do you want to give to anyone who watches this video?
Okay. I I would really like to give the message to people that they're not alone in this. And if someone's scared and this is a very new experience, that there are a lot of other people who've gone through it and things can change. And it doesn't have to mean that your life is going to completely degenerate and fall away. When I first started experiencing this, that was a lot of my big fear, was that it would get worse. That the fact of having this being following me around and talking to me all the time, that this was going to get worse and worse, and it was a sign that I was losing my mind and everything was gonna fall apart for me. But that didn't happen. For me, I need to get over the fear of it. And then once I got over the fear of it, I could start to talk to it and try to figure out why it was there. And when I first started to talk to it, I wasn't productive because I just argued with it and tried to make it go away. And so we were just escalating arguments over and over. But then as I started to realize that I was going to be stuck with it and it wasn't going to leave, and it wasn't, and I was still going to school and working and parenting and doing everything, I started to get more curious, and that curiosity really allowed me to change the relationship.
How old are your children?
13.
How many?
Just one.
And have you explained the situation to your child?
Yeah, we've talked about it. We've talked about it a lot. Like I said, I'm someone who draws a lot, so I have all these sketchbooks where I draw my experiences with these beings and the journeys they've taken me on, and some of the phrases they like to say and the things they've showed me. And yeah, my daughter knows about them. She's very cool about them. One of them, in the protector in particular, who I draw as a big bird lion. She likes a lot. She asks me about him and kind of just talks about him like he's like he's one of our roommates or a house pet that we have. Um, she likes to see the art. She likes to talk to them.
She talks to them?
Well, she asks me. She asks me about how they're. She asks me things about how they're doing or what
Do
they
they
think
ever
about.
talk? Do they talk to her through you?
Sometimes, yeah.
And what do they say to your daughter?
Uh, well, of course, they're very kind to her.
Oh, good, good.
So whatever she's asking about, they'll be honest.
Okay.
Um, she's read a lot of my hearing voices training manual. Um, she did some of the worksheets in it this past year when she was studying. She decided she wanted to study psychology. Um, she's homeschooling, so her school is very self-directed.
Do you meditate?
Yes.
Is that, do the voices try to distract you when you're meditating?
No.
They're silent.
Well, this would be a long discussion. I've been a serious Buddhist since 1996, and um, I practice a very active um, style of Buddhist meditation that has a lot to do with visualization and activity. Um, and the voices that I hear are very connected to my Buddhist practice. So a lot of why they're there is to protect the vows that I've taken around my practice and around right action, and to help um, keep me on this altruistic path, and to not be distracted um, by more mundane everyday life activities like fitting in and making money, and having, trying to give when I was trying to give my family a middle class lifestyle, like by doing work that I didn't really connect with in a meaningful way. So they're very much there as a part of my spiritual practice to help me um, find this life that's more in alignment. Um,
Again, in that advisory capacity.
yeah.
There's a picture, it looks Hindu, like a Hindu deity behind you. Is that Krishna?
No, these are all the Buddha Tara. Um,
Ah,
they're they're different manifestations of the female Buddha Tara, and she takes on different forms for different types of activity, and to connect with beings in the form that they need.
I've never heard of the Buddha Tara. Tara? T-A-R-A?
Yes.
When did she live?
Well, I would say she's still alive in many forms.
Well, I mean physically, when was her body around? You know, like
Um,
the original.
I don't know. So I practice the Tibetan Bon tradition of Buddhism, and they have beliefs in reincarnation of their tradition across many lives and dimensions. So these Buddhas are always emanating and manifesting.
Have you heard of the nun Pema Chodron?
Yeah.
Did you hear this quote from her? She said, "You are the sky, everything else is the weather."
No, I haven't heard that one. That's nice.
There's so many nice quotes,
Yeah.
that wise people have said. Um, well, all right. I guess this concludes our interview. Any final words?
Oh. Um, yeah, be well. If people are interested in the group, they're free to email me at mountainhvn@gmail.com.
We'll put
And
all that
they're happy.
information in there. We'll put your email and your
Okay.
website and your bio and whatever else we think is pertinent, we'll put in there.
Okay.
All
And
right.
thanks for doing this. I really enjoyed the publication.